Good afternoon and welcome back to the Daily Rambam Shir. Today we will be learning the laws of Kiddush HaChodesh, chapter 3. Kiddush HaChodesh means the sanctification of the new month. This is one of the 630 mitzvahs. You've already heard a little bit about it, but Hashem actually puts it into our hands, and He says that we should determine when a new month begins, which is quite powerful. In fact, we see it in the brachas that we say, in the davening that we say on Yom Tov. See, Shabbos is not nearly in our hands. Most we could do is take Shabbos in a little bit early or end it a little bit late, but beyond that, Shabbos is Shabbos. But as far as what day Rosh Hashanah is, or Yom Kippur, or Sukkot, or any of the festivals, that will be determined by when us, the Jewish people, determine the new month begins. So if Sukkot, for example, is on the 15th of the month of Tishrei, well, 15th from day one, when is day one? Well, that's up to us to decide. Hashem has given us a mitzvah that we determine when day one is, and based on that, we will know when day 15 is. And therefore, when it comes to all the festivals, if you look at the davening, we actually say that Hashem, you've sanctified the Jewish people and the time, because it's up to us to determine when their time is. So how exactly is this determined? How exactly would a new month be established? So today's class, chapter 3, will be focused primarily on the witnesses. It is based on testimony. It's based on people coming and testifying that they saw the new moon. So we're going to discuss today what happens, who exactly should come and testify. So we're not going to discuss what it is that they testify. That's for another chapter. But who should come and testify? That's what we'll be discussing today. And then tomorrow, please God, we'll speak about what a leap year is. If you've ever heard the term a Jewish leap year and you're not sure exactly what that means or when it's established, tomorrow we'll learn all about the Jewish leap year. Just before we go straight into the text, let's do as we usually see where we are in the Rambam. We are right now almost at the end of the third volume, Sefer Zmanim. We've learned all of these different laws. We've learned Shabbos and Yom Kippur and Pesach and Yom Tov and Rosh Hashanah and Sukkot and Shkalim. And now we are up to Kiddush HaChodesh, which has 19 chapters. So we're in chapter 3, which means there are another 16 chapters, which means we'll be on this for about the next 2.5 weeks. Over the next 2.5 weeks, we'll be learning about Kiddush HaChodesh. And let me warn you that today's chapter is easy, tomorrow's chapter is easy, but I'm sure you've already heard from the previous rabbis, at some point down the line, we are going to go into heavy-duty astronomy. So you'll have to really hold your thinking caps on tight, as the Rambam will guide us as to when exactly the new moon would be able to appear. So that way, since the Beis Din was well-versed in astronomy, when witnesses showed up and they said that we saw the new moon, the Beis Din would be able to know whether the witnesses were talking the truth or whether they were talking nonsense. So that's coming our way later in the section of Kiddush HaChodesh. But for today, let's talk about who should come and testify that they saw the new moon. So, quite an interesting chapter. Let's start with halacha number 1. So when witnesses see the new moon, and there's a journey of the night and the day or less between them and the place where the court holds sessions, meaning if the person that saw the new moon lived less than 24 hours away from the Beis Din, they should undertake the journey and testify. However, if the distance between them is greater, then there's no point to them undertaking the journey, because by the time they get there, it will be too late. Because it will already be beyond the 30th day. So maybe this was already made clear in the previous classes, but let me just go over it one more time to have it super clear. So you have a month, a calendar month. Let's pull up a month over here. Sorry, 1 second. So here we have a month at a glance. In fact, I'm going to move it to a year. So here we go. You see the first month has 30 days, the second month is 29 days, third month 29, the fourth 29, fifth 30, 29. So every month is either 29 or 30 days. Now, if on this day number 30, witnesses would see a new moon, then on that very day they would say, okay, there's a new moon. That means today is not day 30, today is number 1, which means the first day of the next month would be on Sunday, which means that that previous month would only have 29 days. However, if that Sunday, even if people saw the new moon, but they lived more than 24 hours away, so if they showed up the next day and they said, no, we saw a new moon yesterday, so now it's already the next day. So now we're not going to go back and change the date of Sunday. We're already on Monday. So we'll just say that by Monday, it's for sure a new month. So the question is, on this day 30, do witnesses see the new moon or not? If they see the new moon and they get a chance to testify that it's not day 30, but it's day number 1 of the next month, leaving the previous month only 29 days. And if they did not see the new moon or they didn't get a chance to get there, then it would be day 30 and the next month would only be on Monday. So that is, in summary, how the witnesses would determine when the new month was. If they saw the new moon, then the new month would start from day number 30, meaning that the previous month would only have 29 days. If they didn't see the new moon, then it means that the previous month would have 30 days and the first day would be over here. So therefore, the Rambam says that if somebody lived more than 24 hours away, then there's no point in them coming to Beis Din, because by the time they come, it will be too late. Although we will see soon that if somebody did trek out there and they arrived, then sometimes we will accept their testimony retroactively, which is quite fascinating. So we'll get to that right at the end of the chapter. Halacha number 2, 3, and 4. What about Shabbos? The witnesses who see the new moon should journey to the court to testify even on Shabbos. As the Torah says, these are the festivals you should proclaim b'moyadam, in their season. And whenever the Torah says b'moyadam, in their season or in their set time, it means that it needs to be in its time, regardless of whether it's Shabbos or not. So even on Shabbos, they would need to get onto their horse, get onto their motorbike, get into their car, and drive to the Beis Din and tell the Beis Din that they saw the new moon, because that has to be done on time, regardless of whether it is or isn't Shabbos. I said get into their car. I imagine so, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But already, even if they were going by foot, we'll see that there's a lot of Shabbos violation involved, and that's fine, because declaring the new month is more important than that. So now, that said, however, this only applies to the beginning of to Rosh Chodesh Nisan and Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. Why specifically these 2 months? Let's just see it on the calendar over here. So we have over here, Tishrei is the first month of the year. Nisan is the 7th month of the year. These 2 months, meaning Tishrei, which is around September, October time, and Nisan, which is around March, April time, have festivals in them. And therefore, it's critical that we know when the new moon appeared, because that will determine what day Yom Tov is. Depending on whether this day over here is a new month or not, will determine what day the 15th is, and the 15th is Sukkot, and what day the 10th is, which is Yom Kippur, and what day Rosh Hashanah itself is. The same thing for Nisan, it will determine what day Pesach is. As far as Shavuos is concerned, Shavuos actually doesn't go by the date. Shavuos goes by 50 days after Pesach, so it would be irrelevant what day Rosh Chodesh was. However, in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, This would every month people would need to break Shabbos in order to get there, so they would know whether they need to bring the special korban, the special offering that was brought on Rosh Chodesh. What about Shabbos? So just as the witnesses who saw the new moon break Shabbos in order to get there to the Beis Din, so too we've learned that if witnesses are not familiar to the Beis Din, then they should bring with them others that will testify about their credibility. So not only can the witnesses break Shabbos to get there, even supporting other people that are going to give them credibility, they could also break Shabbos to get there. Even if it's only one person that saw the new moon, meaning that in his own rights, he's useless because you need two people to sanctify the new moon. You need two people to testify. Still, he should go and break Shabbos because there's a possibility that he might bump into another Yid along the way who's also coming, and then the two would be able to team up. In fact, what happens if the witness is sick? He could be put onto a donkey, which I guess in today's terms would be a car. Indeed, even if he is bedridden, his bed may be transported. He could have a whole team of people carrying his beds to Jerusalem so that he can testify. What happens if they're worried about wars or ambushes along the way? They can take weaponry with them. What happens if it's long and they're going to need food? They could carry food. They could break Shabbos in pretty much every way that is necessary in order for them to get to Beis Din. Even if the moon was sighted with a large crescent, and one is certain that it was also sighted by many others as well. So why should I go and break Shabbos? Just as we saw the new moon, I'm sure others did too. Why should we break the Shabbos? No. Every person who sees the new moon, who is fit to serve as a witness, and who is within the distance of the night and day or less, within 24 hours distance, is commanded to break Shabbos and go and testify. There's a whole story in the Mishnah of, I think it was Rabbi Shimon or Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Gamliel, where there was literally dozens. It was like a whole entourage of people that were all breaking Shabbos and traveling in order to testify the new moon. And it seems absurd because all you need is two people. And here you had big groups of people all traveling. But the halacha is that each person shouldn't rely on somebody else. It could be that there'll be an issue with the others. If I saw the new moon, I need to go and testify, even if it means breaking Shabbos. You have a similar concept with Hatzalah, which is that you're not going to say that, okay, there's somebody else in the proximity, let him break Shabbos. No, if a call goes out, whoever's able to should go, even though you might be completely unnecessary, and you're not going to need 4 cars on the scene, you'll just need 1. But if you might be able to help, then you break Shabbos and you go and you help. So as far as the deadline, until what point can the Beis Din still accept the witnesses? So originally the Beis Din would accept testimony throughout the entire 30th day, which would mean from the beginning of the 30th day, well, it needs to be done during the daytime. But up until, let's say, sunset at 6 p.m., let's say the 30th day was on a Sunday, so up until 6 p.m. on Sunday, they would be able to accept testimony. And up until 6 p.m. on Sunday itself, it would still be unclear whether Sunday was the 30th of the previous month, because no witnesses came, or it was already the first day of the next month, because witnesses didn't come. However, once the witnesses were delayed, it didn't come until the evening. This created confusion in the Beis HaMikdash, because the priests, the Kohanim, didn't know what to do. Do they bring the regular afternoon sacrifice, the Tamid Shel Ben Arbayim, as a regular day? Or do they bring the special offering of Musaf, which is for Rosh Chodesh? So since they were stuck, and since there was much confusion as opposed to what is today Rosh Chodesh or is it not Rosh Chodesh? The High Court instituted that testimony regarding the new moon would be accepted only until Mincha time. When it says Mincha time, it means I think Mincha Gdola, which is around Mincha Ketana, which was around 3 p.m. So they've given about a 3-hour gap. You got to be in by 3 p.m. if you want to make today Rosh Chodesh. So that there would be enough time in the daylight hours to offer the Musaf sacrifice and the afternoon service and the wine libations, because everything had to be done before the afternoon offering. So if they offered it, it would be too late for Musaf. But on the other hand, they couldn't wait around for too long, so the deadline was 3 o'clock. If the time of Mincha arrived without witnesses having come, then they would bring the afternoon offering. And if witnesses came after that time, then they would keep that day as a Yom Tov, as Rosh Chodesh, and the following day. So this is where we have the concept of 2 days Rosh Chodesh. So that's what we have today. Anytime, although we always today, but let me just think for a moment. No, it's different from what we have today. Today, if the 30th day of the month is Rosh Chodesh, then that day is Rosh Chodesh and the first day of the next month. Yeah, pretty much like this. Except we always have it two. Whenever the 30th day is Rosh Chodesh, we have 2 days of Rosh Chodesh. As opposed to in their time, if it was after around 3 p.m. that they declared the 30th day as Rosh Chodesh, then they would say, well, we've already moved on with the program for today, so we'll have to bring the Musaf offering tomorrow. So it means that today would be considered Rosh Chodesh. Again, then it would mean that that day, that month, really only had 29 days, because that 30th day became the first day of the next month. So then they would actually be keeping what would become day 1 and day 2 Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the month and the second day of the month. It's a little different from what we have today. Anyhow, the idea is that if the witnesses came after 3 p.m. that afternoon, then that day would be Rosh Chodesh as well as the following. However, once the temple was destroyed, so Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and his court instituted that testimony can be accepted up until sunset. Why? Because there are no longer offerings that need to be brought. So there's no real practical difference whether today is Rosh Chodesh or isn't. What about the davening? Good question. I'm not sure. Because you got to know, do you daven the special musaf or not? Not sure. Okay, number 7. So once Rosh Chodesh was established, when the court would make a month full, if the month was full because the witnesses did not appear on the 30th day at all, they would ascend to a previously designated place and hold a feast on the 31st day, which would be Rosh Chodesh. So if witnesses didn't come on day 30, then on day 31, which is number 1 of the next month, the basin would say, well, apparently Rosh Chodesh is now. They would not ascend there during the 31st night, but rather at daybreak, just before sunrise. No fewer than 10 men would participate in the meal, and they would make sure to have breads from grain and legumes, which they would enjoy. This is the intent of all the sources that refer to the feast associated with the mitzvah of the full month. So even today, there's a little bit of a mitzvah to have a more special meal on Rosh Chodesh. And the origin of this was, if witnesses didn't show up, then this is how the basin would declare the 31st day as day number 1 of the next month, by 10 people going to a designated spot and having at least 10 people and having a special Rosh Chodesh meal. Okay, so now we know it's Rosh Chodesh, but how do we get everybody to know it's Rosh Chodesh? How do we notify the public? So originally, when the court would sanctify the new moon, they would light bonfires on the mountaintops to notify the people in distant places. However, when the Samaritans began conducting themselves in a debased manner and would light bonfires at the wrong times to confuse the people. So you had people that constantly wanted to undermine the authority of the sages. They didn't believe in the oral law. And so the base did originally, the way that they told people that there's a new month would be they'd go to the highest mountain in town, they would light a bonfire, and then in the next town, on the night of the 30th or the night of the 31st, they would go up to the mountaintop there and they'd look to the next mountain and see, is there a fire? And if there is, they would light one too. And within a few seconds, the entire Israel, the skyline would be filled with fires at the top of every mountain, and everybody knew it was Rosh Chodesh. Well, that all worked very well until, guys, we got some crooks in the program and they started lighting the fires just by themselves. So that caused complete havoc. So that stopped working. So then the sages instituted the practice of having messengers journey to notify the people. These messages may not break Shabbos or Yom Tov or Yom Kippur because it's not really to make the new month, it's just to let people know where the new month is. Because, yeah, as we said, we could only break Shabbos to declare Rosh Chodesh, not to notify people of it. I remember once when I went to do a Seder in Russia, in Belarus, in White Russia. And I wasn't sure what time Yom Tov began. So we went to some remote town, and I didn't know exactly when sunset was. And I called my sister in South Africa just before Yom Tov, it was within a few hours, to ask her what time sunset is in the particular town that I was in. I think this time I was in a town called Slutsk, either Slutsk or Polotsk. I went twice. Either way, she went and she looked it up online. And then she came back to me and she said that it already was. That sunset had already happened. I was obviously horrified because I was busy talking on the phone and a little bit shocked, but I couldn't speak anymore because that meant it was already Yom Tov. So I basically just dropped the phone, and then I didn't know what to do. I was like, no ways, it can't be. And then I went to the window and I noticed that there was still a little bit of sun on the top of the trees. So I realized it must be a mistake over here. It has to be a mistake because the sun had not yet set. I was still able to see it on the treetops. So I think meanwhile, maybe my sister was trying to call me back, or maybe she was asking, are you there? Are you there? And I realized I could pick up, but she said, no, she made a mistake. There was daylight savings, which she hadn't taken into consideration. So that was quite a scary moment where the phone just dropped because it seemed like it was already Yom Tov. So we could break Yom Tov in order to make Rosh Chodesh, but we can't break Yom Tov in order to find out when Rosh Chodesh is. That was just a little memory that I had, memory lane. Back to the text. See, we're running out of time, so I'll try to move quickly. Okay, so the messages would go out for 6 months. In Nisan for Pesach, in the month of Av because of the fast of Tisha B'Av. This is obviously after the temple was destroyed. For Elul because of Rosh Hashanah, so that they would know when the 30th day of Elul is. If it became known to them that the High Court had sanctified the 30th day, then they would observe only that day as a holiday. If it did not become known to them, they would observe both the 30th and the 31st day as Rosh Hashanah until the messages of Tishrei arrived. So that's why Rosh Hashanah actually has 2 days, because there was no time for people to get notified, because it's on the first day of the month. For Tishrei, because of the festivals, all the festivals, Kislev because of Hanukkah, Adar because of Purim. However, while the Beis Hamikdash was standing, they would also go out to the month of Iyar for Pesach Sheni, the second Pesach. Even when the moon was clearly sighted on the previous night, the messages for the months of Nisan and Tishrei would not go out until the sun rose and they heard the court announce it has been sanctified. So there had to be a declaration by the court, and even if it was obvious that it was Rosh Chodesh, they would not be able to travel out until they had heard this from their ears, from the court itself. If, however, the court sanctified the moon at the conclusion of the 29th day, which is a strange phenomena, it would be if they saw the new moon right at the end of the 29th, so it was already like the beginning of the 30th, but it was still day, that the basin would be able to declare it then they would be able to go out already in the evening. The messages for the other months, by contrast, may depart in the evening after the moon has been sighted, because although it hasn't yet been declared by the Beis Din, it's certainly going to happen, and I guess it's of less consequence because there's no Yom Tov coming up. Wherever these messages would arrive before Yom Tov, the holidays would be observed for 1 day, as is in the Torah. In distant places where the messages would not arrive before Yom Tov, they would have to keep 2 days because they wouldn't know which day Rosh Chodesh was. This is where we have the concept of, in the diaspora, we celebrate 2 days of Yom Tov, and in Israel, we celebrate only 1 day of Yom Tov. Number 12. There are places where the messages sent out for Nisan would arrive So they'd get there in time for Nisan, but not in time for Tishrei. Because in Tishrei, there are more Yomim Tovim. So they'd have to stop along the way. So the rabbi said, we're not going to want there to be a differentiation between Pesach and Sukkot. So if they're not going to be able to arrive in time for Sukkot, then it means that Pesach also needs to be 2 days. Yeah, so that was 12 and 13. Number 14, notifying the public. They wouldn't have to send out 2 messages. Even a single individual would be believed. Even a merchant. Why? Because as a matter of time, his legitimacy will be determined. Because eventually they'll hear what actually happened in the rest of the world. So therefore, anybody is believed. Number 15. So these final halachas, these final 4 halachas, and I see we've hit 131. So I'll try to just go through it quickly. Deals with a very strange scenario where the witnesses showed up later, and so it turns out that Rosh Chodesh came already, and now the question is, do we change the calendar backwards? Do we retroactively change what day it is because of what day Rosh Chodesh was? That's quite a strange scenario, and the bottom line is that the Beis Din tries to prevent the witnesses from testifying, meaning they try to really give them a thorough cross-examination that they might be able to quote out. But if the witnesses remained absolutely clear in their testimony, then we would follow them, and then we'd actually need to go back and re-date the last few days. One other scenario is that there is a scenario where the rabbis would be allowed to still, even after these witnesses came, say, look, once it had 30 days, we're going to leave it at 30 days. There's question whether this applies, whether to Nisan or Tishrei or which other months. So that's pretty much the discussion up until the end of the chapter. If the witnesses showed up late, how much should we intimidate them to try to prevent them from causing the dates to change, or which scenarios should we and which scenarios we shouldn't. So just to summarize, we spoke about anybody who sees the new moon should travel if they are within a 24-hour radius, even on Shabbos. Have nowadays up until, or once the temple was destroyed, up until sunset. If no witnesses came, the Beis Din would make a special meal on day 31. They would send out even one person to notify the public. And depending on where the people arrived or when they arrived would determine whether there was 1 day of Yom Tov or 2 days of Yom Tov. That is pretty much it for chapter 3.